Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast. I'm Nathan Isaacs, Senior Manager for Content Production here at User Testing. And joining us today as host is Cornelia Klimek, Group Product Manager of Core Experience at User Testing. Welcome, Cornelia.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here today.
And our guest today is Shannon Graf. Shannon is Director of Design Research at Signet Jewelers. She has a 20-plus year background in UX research. She is also a registered yoga instructor and wellness coach, and recently published her first book, It's Nothing But Pavement, Shedding the Should When the Path Before You is Not Always the Path You Choose. Welcome to the show, Shannon.
Yeah, welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Shannon, before we dive into your work at Signet, I'd actually really like to hear more about this book. What has inspired you to write It's Nothing But Pavement? And then how did it relate to your journey in UX research?
Well, thank you for letting me chat a little bit about this new accomplishment of mine that I'm very proud of. It's still a little surreal to have this thing out there in the wild, but I did it. So I actually put pen to paper finally during the pandemic. I love writing. It's always been something I enjoyed doing, but I always thought I would be a fiction writer if I ever published anything. So the fact that I have a nonfiction book out there still baffles me a little bit. When I was pitching my two fiction ideas over the course of about a 90-minute conversation with my publisher, he said, "You have a good story to tell." And I said, "Well, which one? Which one did you like?" And he said, "No, you have a story to tell." And my immediate response is no, which, as you know, probably that's a big limiting belief. Why would I say no before I kind of assess the possibilities of a yes, which I talk about in the book also. And so the path forward from there was let's just meet and chat about it, see where it goes. So I met with the editor at the time. We had a great rapport, and we just started recording our conversations, and then she would transcribe them, and I would just kind of go from there. And just kind of as the weeks went on, before I knew it, I was writing a book. And so it turns out I had some things to say that I was comfortable sharing with the world, apparently. When you've, I guess, lived a little over 40 years, you have a little bit of knowledge or life experience that is worth talking about. So here I am. And it was more the process, as most people know. It's all about the journey, especially being in research. We talk about journeys all the time and where we're at. But it was something I wasn't sure if I would actually go through with and publish. I did have some imposter syndrome that came to me the last 6 months before I finally finished the book. And I thought, I can't get this far and tell my daughter that I quit. So at least I'm going to finish this book, even if it's just for her. But I ended up going through with it and publishing it. And here we are. It's been in the wild for a little over 2 months now.
That is honestly incredible. I loved hearing that. And you're right. I mean, like the journey is like half the battle. I love that you kind of like found all these hurdles and you just leapt right over them and really believed in yourself. So congratulations. What an accomplishment.
Thank you very much. And I do mention this in the book as well, but something to kind of take from that is just follow the next yes. If I said yes to this, then what? Rather than just sort of limiting yourself and saying, that doesn't sound like me at all. But I just opened the door of possibility by going, okay, I'll take the next meeting and see where this goes. And then that next meeting led to me just sitting down and kind of had a lot to say. So I encourage anybody listening, what could that yes lead you to? And just consider that.
That is such a powerful lesson. And it obviously is just so universally applicable. It doesn't need to be a book. It could be in your career. It could be kind of in your personal life. Like, what's kind of holding you back? And is it nothing more than just the next yes?
Exactly.
I love that so much.
I think
I could chat about that whole journey on its own all day. But, I think we want to maybe refocus a little bit on your work at Signet Jewelers. We know Signet, largest retailer of diamond jewelry in the world. But maybe for listeners who aren't so familiar, can you maybe share a little bit more about the company and all of the brands that fall under it?
Absolutely. A lot of people don't really, the word Signet doesn't always resonate with people right away. But if you think of retail jewelers that you're probably more familiar with, like Zales, Jared, formerly known as Piercing Pagoda for the mall goers who have probably seen those kiosks. We're now Banter is the brand there, where you can go and get piercings as well as jewelry. So those are the probably the most well-known brands that we have under the Signet umbrella. And we have corporate locations in Dallas and Akron, Ohio.
Wow. So, I mean, I just like when I went to the website and you're right. I was like, I've heard of Signet, but like all of those like child companies that kind of fall within it, it's just like such an immediate, like when you said K, and like I'm the one who grew up, it's like every kiss begins with K. I'm like, what a brilliant slogan.
Yes, or he went to Jared. Yes.
That's
Those
exactly.
are really well known by those slogans for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not just the slogans. There's a ton of incredible success that Signet's had recently. I just happened to be reading a transcript of the first quarter earnings call, and your CEO, Gina, said one of the company's competitive advantages is your investment in consumer insights, which is like both an amazing and a refreshing take to hear. I would love to understand more about your specific role at Signet and then the work that you and your team do there.
Absolutely. I will say one of the most refreshing aspects of joining a company like this is that, other companies I've been a part of, or even stakeholders in the consulting world, you have to kind of get some buy-in as to why research is needed. Because it's sometimes perceived as something that's going to slow us down or it's going to cost too much. And it's really the opposite. It's if you lead with insights, you're actually saving time, resources, energy on the back end. And so really kind of helping people understand that and using that kind of arc when you're telling that story can be really helpful. But I didn't have to do that at Signet. There was already so much buy-in as, of course, we want research. Of course, we need consumer insights. So that was a given. So that hurdle was already jumped for me. Didn't have to worry about that when I joined. So I work within the digital part of Signet. And so we report up to the Chief Digital Officer, and we formed during 2020. So we were a baby group. Yeah. Prior to that. Yeah, I mean, we outsourced a lot of those research needs prior to that, but we brought everything in-house in 2020. And so our team formed completely remotely. We're all distributed. While there are a lot of us that are in the Dallas and Akron location, most of us are distributed. So that's a story in and of itself. We got to form during this pandemic. And so we really got to get, kind of the cream of the crop in terms of who we wanted to bring onto the team and from different walks of life. So our digital org is comprised of producers who keep us on task. They're great at kind of analyzing the business objectives that we need to be accountable for. We've got a great team of talented designers. And then there's my team, the research folks. So we do lead with insights. We partner with consumer insights teams, our analytics department. So we start there just to get a good foundation of what do we know and what do we not know. And then we, within the XD research team, so experience design is known as XD. So our research team is then accountable to what does that need to account for within the digital experiences, be it mobile web, the desktop apps, and even our in-store apps. So we do a lot of in-store research as well to support our jewelry experts that are in the stores, oftentimes on electronic devices, walking a customer through what they're looking for, or maybe they don't know what they're looking for and they're trying to help them maybe customize a piece of jewelry. So my team is responsible for bringing all of that research back and kind of helping the business understand what the user needs are before we go out and build something. So in a nutshell, that's what my team is accountable for.
I feel like there's so much more to unpack there. And so we're going to touch, I feel, on a number of those things through this conversation. But I mean, realistically, it would be silly to think that your team, like, it feels like it just plays such a crucial role in like just the business outcomes, right?
Yeah,
just
we're really
like
fortunate to have the buy-in, but to also, I mean, people come to us now. Sometimes it's harder to get folks from different, walks of life to really understand leading with research, leading with insights, and trusting that. But now my researchers are like, product comes directly to me now. They're asking me questions, and they want to know more about what type of research we can do. So they're even educating themselves on our different methodologies, which is really fun. It's more fun to bring people along for the ride than to have to get all the way through a research engagement, explain why we did everything, kind of look under the hood and go through so many details, versus they care so much or they're so involved and invested that they want to know from the get-go what we're doing and let's have some touch points. Tell me what some of those emerging themes are. And they're taking those back to their teams and already starting to think about, is this something we can prioritize? Does this now take priority over what we thought was next on the roadmap? So those are healthy conversations. It's always good to hear how those insights and the desire for insights can create dialogue within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also sounds, because you work maybe so cross-departmentally and functionally within Signet itself, that you probably are also taking in a lot of learnings to be able to share out to these stakeholder partners as well.
Absolutely. And we do. You mentioned collaboration, and that's a really big key component that helps Signet function, but especially within our digital org. And we have really started, we'll probably get into this shortly, some projects that help us extend outside of just digital and, partnering with marketing, the communications teams, and different other efforts that are going on within Signet as a business that, research is really helping to support these days.
I think, and just in terms of the different areas of opportunity and impact that it sounds like your team has, you even noted that during 2020, obviously with COVID, everything kind of gets a little bit, had to move online. There was nothing open. So the growth of e-commerce, I feel, is a huge contributor also to Signet's recent success. And I would love to understand better, maybe more specifically, how your teams support in that growth and in that change through also forming during the same time. It sounded like you were really so needed to be there. Actually impacted the outcomes and the experiences that these customers are having.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's the buy-in that we have from the top down of really listening. Yes, business is always going to have objectives. It's largely going to be revenue driven. I often say we bridge that gap. We understand the business needs, but we also go out and just really help advocate, as we often do, for what the user is showing us, even if we're just observing them going, hey, they're saying one thing, but they did this instead. Let's go dig into why that is. And it ends up being, oh, they were looking for the product on an actual model. They don't want to see the product standalone. They want to see, what does someone like me look like wearing this thing? Is this the right product for me? Just those little observations and just really being able to showcase, the value of the user's desires and why those matter, listening to them and really kind of amplifying for the different we call them banners. So for K, those customers might be slightly different from a banter customer. So what are some of those behaviors? What are the trends across our banners? But what makes them uniquely different? And really helping understand, we have all the components digitally, but what might we want to amplify? Is it messaging? Is it product placement? Is it, hey, here's something new? Is it holiday season? And we want to kind of showcase, what they might be interested in. We also put an emphasis on personalization. We're really always trying to do a lot of work around how much is too much personalization versus what's going to draw them in and also keep them coming back. So we're looking at a lot of topics, around customization. Do they even know how much they can customize on our sites? And a lot of folks initially in our first rounds of research weren't quite aware that customization went beyond simply engraving something, but where you can truly work with a jewelry expert online, in store, and walk through the entire process of customizing a piece. People can even bring their own designs to a consultant online, in store, and walk through a customization process. But that's something that we learned in our research not a lot of people were aware of. So awareness is a big one that we dug into early on after 2020, as well as what can we do to instill confidence? Because a lot of times jewelry is an investment, right? So how do you instill confidence through a digital experience that, my investment is really going to get me that end result that I desire? So truly, listening and bringing those stories back to the organization and being able to showcase the value and the impact. We can continue to prioritize business objectives, but what's the impact going to be to the customer? It might show in the dollars. So those are really key areas to really dig into when we're trying to talk research with the business.
I love everything you just said. Obviously, one of the best things about working at UT is that we feel the same way. If we're not building for our customers, then what are we doing? But it sounds like, especially in your industry, no one wants the same piece of jewelry that someone else has, right? There's so much of that level of personalization that doesn't just happen in the product, the tangible jewelry product, but the whole experience of, again, you're spending and investing that money in a piece that you kind of want to feel like this whole flow is built for you and what you need.
It's easy. If there's a glitch in that process, that's going to be a dip in my confidence that what the digital experience knows who I am, what I'm looking for, and can deliver on that result. So we really have to be cognizant of, that level of confidence can be tipped at any moment.
Yeah, and I think that's such a difficult thing to be able to maybe bring back up to leadership and stakeholders, is like a concept of confidence and this concept of trust, because those are difficult things to measure. But when they aren't there, they're one of those. I mean, I'm a core experience product manager, so like I understand. It's like one of those things that's like, if it's working great, then you don't hear about it. You just like get the outcome. But if something is off, then you're going to lose it, and it's so hard to gain it back. Then you have to work twice as hard to like bring them back the next time. Be like, I promise, we've got it. So that's incredible. It's incredible the work that your team does to be able to do that. And I'm so, I'm so relieved for you that you have this investment from your stakeholders internally to support that.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. It's an asset, and that's something we don't take lightly.
I mean, and I think that's fantastic. So I do want to note, like you do a lot of digital, obviously experience work, but you even noted earlier that you do some in-store research as well. And there was maybe even like a recent Kano study that you might have run in store. And I feel for listeners familiar, Kanos are a challenge enough to like run online, let alone trying to get real life in-person humans to respond. Maybe for those unfamiliar, can you share what a Kano is? And then, maybe in this particular example, some goals you had or your stakeholders had in running it, and what challenges, if any, did you kind of have in executing?
No, that's a great question. So, and Kano, however you want to pronounce it, these studies are really helpful. And what I always try to encourage people to listen for when they're trying to understand when to apply the method, let me backtrack just for a little bit. It's feature prioritization that involves users. So that's kind of the nitty gritty. So you've got quant through surveys and everything, but that's not telling you the whole story. You need that qualitative sometime to kind of substantiate what the numbers are saying. And a Kano or a Kano method is really helpful in doing that. You can kind of not only understand what features might be desirable, nice to have versus expectation, have to deliver on this, or it's going to be a deal breaker, but they also, bring that element of qualitative in there. They're telling you kind of why and giving you context around here's why, here's my day to day. And if I didn't have this, here's how it would impact my day to day. So when we often hear we kind of churn a lot sometimes in these meetings, and it's going back and forth on what are our true priorities. Sometimes that's a good place to go time out. Maybe we need to do a prioritization. And this is a great method for that. And I've been encouraging the team to kind of leverage mixed methods when they can. And so since some of my team is going in store often as is, and because we're distributed, we're able to go to stores across the US because I've got researchers, in various locations. So urban locations like New York City, suburban areas outside of Denver. So we're really understanding these themes across different stores across the state. So that's been a really insightful endeavor for us to really be able to get back in stores again. But we decided to try, there's a big push for AI these days. And there was an assumption that, in store, there's probably going to be a little resistance to AI. And we found the opposite to be true of they know it's there. AI is a big hot topic right now. So let's go and kind of discuss, where this can help support the in-store experiences and sort of help alleviate any sort of friction points that they're experiencing in store. And so another thing that I would add here that supported that, and I've seen it also work in sort of a participatory design setting, is having designs to help communicate what that feature is that we're talking about, rather than leaving it to the user to sort of conceptualize us, talk them through this thing that doesn't exist yet. So having a designer to just have concepts drafted up, wireframes, they don't have to be anything fancy or high def. So just having that, to kind of align with what we were kind of trying to get feedback on was really helpful in this particular case, because, you're standing up in a store, you're not sitting down behind a computer necessarily. Sometimes we do have, the iPads that we can point to, but for the most part, having those designs to just help communicate the feature that we were trying to describe to them was really helpful. So yeah, it was a successful round of research in store, leveraging a method that we hadn't done before in store.
That's really interesting to just kind of hear how you also considered what maybe some of those pitfalls might be, maybe from other learnings before kind of going in and trying it at scale realistically in person, which kind of feels a little bit more risky generally than, running an online study. Was this particular one run in tandem with an online audience, or was it just like you were just prioritizing for the in-person experience?
This particular one was just for our in-store jewelry consultants. So it was in person only. And we are seeing a need for that more and more. And this is also important because it helps us paint a clearer picture of all aspects of the business, right? It's not just customers going in store or online. They're doing both. Sometimes they're starting the research process online and then going in store. So how do we kind of meet them in that journey where they are? Or help them kind of foster that, continue that digital experience so that it could be a confidence thing that they just want to go in store and finish the process, or they just want to get a lay of the land to educate themselves before they then go in store and, speak on their behalf of what they're looking for. So it's just helpful to also, for us as researchers, to understand what those customer interactions look and sound like in store. How are they describing what they want? And what can we leverage in our digital experiences, and vice versa? So how do we learn from both?
That's so interesting. So can you share any outcomes at all
We're currently in the synthesis process right now. So we just came back from the stores last week, but
oh my God, so fresh. It's like hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's like, honestly though, I actually think for anyone listening, it's so encouraging to hear that there is also an opportunity to apply some of these like mixed method learnings, and that you might be getting and knowing different insights from chatting with people at different stages when they're kind of already in the experience itself, right? That's so important, even if you're building for digital, which is like just so fascinating.
Great point.
I think you've also touched on this a little bit throughout our conversation of just like, how supportive it feels like the team at Signet is. But I do want to maybe talk about, like, generally it's such a value, right? Like empowering team members at Signet, which I think is incredible. And it's so important to actually also to glean that they're living it, not just saying it, walking the walk. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe how Signet incorporates any employee experience testing into its UX research process, and has that had any impact on employee or even customer satisfaction or experience?
I'm really excited that this is a topic we get to touch on because it is so timely. One of the things that I'm excited to share that my research team gets to do, we started this about 3 years ago, is, we have our day-to-day, what we call roadmap work, that we're working on with our product partners. And we started 3 years ago with also kind of what we call all hands projects, where we all come together as a research team and pick sort of a passion project that also has impact on Signet. So the first year we did it, it was a gender study. What is the role of gender and kind of, things that are changing in that climate, these days, and how do we respond to that? What can we learn from that and apply to our experiences? The next year we did a sustainability study. That's a big effort, that a lot of companies are paying attention to. How is that messaging resonating? Where are customers at with, carrying kind of that spectrum of what do they care about and how do they choose where they're going to purchase from and shop from based on some of these factors? So this year we're doing employee experience. So we turned the lens on ourselves, and we just got through our first phase. So very timely. And that also happened to coincide with something we do often at Signet, which is Voice of the Employee. We do Voice of the Employee surveys. And so our team is partnering with Voice of the Employee team to really kind of marry these insights together. So we've just done the first phase of talking to employees across our digital org. We're starting here, and then we're going to scale out and talk to, other areas of the business. But we've decided to turn the focus on our digital org first for folks that were willing to participate. And everybody from management all the way down to interns who are just here with us for a season to understand everything from onboarding, what's working well, what could we learn from, what maybe not be working so well, but all the way through to tenured people that have been here 10, 15, 20 plus years and sort of their experience, folks that are back in the office, folks that are remote, folks that are hybrid. So we really kind of took a good pass. We feel like we've got a good pass at, kind of all different perspectives within the digital org. And now we're in the process of bearing those insights with the results from the Voice of the Employee team to then turn those into recommendations for the business. So the fact that we can even do this and that we have buy-in again is just, it's something, again, I don't take lightly. It really is a privilege to be able to work for a company that not only cares about listening to customers and turning that into, results from the digital perspective, outward facing, but really cares about the employees from an inward facing perspective.
That was like, just I'm so thrilled. And it sounds like you get to follow some of these like passion projects. It really sounds like it's going to help keep the team engaged. It really has tangible outcomes that can kind of turn into recommendations. And I feel like from probably a lot of people listening to this are like, how do I apply? Like, how do I get into this place?
Love that. And it is a learning opportunity for the researchers on my team to kind of flex some of their goals. For somebody that maybe hasn't led a research engagement, we can say, hey, why don't you go drive this session? Why don't you bring some of those emerging themes back and do a miniature readout? Just giving people opportunity that they may not have yet in some of our day-to-day roadmap work that is a little more higher stakes. But this is also just a growth opportunity to give people just, hey, you've never run a Kano study before. Why don't you support this one and get some exposure to it? So it's a win-win for everybody. But these all hands projects have become something that we're really proud of as a research team.
Yeah, and I think not that it sounds like you need it, but can also kind of help elevate the team's outcomes and outputs to the organization as a whole. So even those who might not be directly working with you get a chance to appreciate the kind of work and, what I want to say here, like impact.
No, it's positive.
The impact that you've had.
Yeah. It's been a very positive byproduct where, oh, you're doing this project. I didn't even know you guys did this type of work. Just understanding even one of my philosophies is show versus tell. If we can just demonstrate the value of what we do versus having to explain with a deck, because everyone has seen plenty of, presentations from it. But if we can just demonstrate the value of the work we do. So for example, I got to do a couple of interviews with folks that I would otherwise not cross paths with within the organization. And, so they learned a little bit about what research does within Signet. And so just by nature of getting to interview somebody for the project, now they understand, a little bit more about Signet Digital. So,
win-win.
Yep.
I love that so much. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so I think maybe to round this out, and I feel like this is like a really great way to, unfortunately, like end the conversation, but in my line of work, given the product that we work on, I talk to a lot of researchers, a lot of people who use user testing, and we try to understand, maybe similar, obviously, to a lot of, our customers, like what's going on, how can we help you, what's missing, and a common struggle that they really share with us is they really have a hard time connecting the research that they're doing and the research outcomes that they are providing to business needs and business ROI. And you've touched on this, I think, in a number of different ways throughout this conversation, but you're a senior leader in this industry. What strategies do you find most effective in aligning your team's UX goals with the broader business objectives?
It's a great question, and it's a really important one that I feel is probably relevant to every researcher out there. Well, first of all, we always start, I say always, we try to always start our projects by really getting clear and curious about what problem we are solving. So if we don't have an understanding of, okay, we take a JIRA ticket, and it says that we're going to do this thing. Where did it originate? Why is it in the order of priority that it is in? What impact is it having today? Do we know? Do we have data to show kind of where this, project is at right now? Is this a net new issue? Is it something that is are we evolving something that's already out there? Why? So sometimes we joke, we ask why for a living. So we ask why until we get to that core of, okay, we have a clear understanding of this objective, and we turn it into what we call a problem statement. So that throughout the engagement, we're going back to that problem statement, and that can change. As we get smarter, as we're learning through research or what the data team tells us, we might add some caveats. We might add a little bit more detail to evolve that problem statement, but that is our anchor. So any research engagement we do beyond that, and any designs that we create out of those research results, comes back to, did we adhere to why we're solving this problem and what it was? I also, once we've done the research and we have the outcomes and the insights, what is the value and the impact? So if we were to pursue this, what value does it add, not just to the customer, but to the business? And we talk a lot about trade-offs. If we don't do this, what is the trade-off? And so we really try to establish comfortable forms where we can have those honest dialogues. Quite honestly, it's just a communication thing, right? If they really can't tie the why to the how do we get there, and why do we invest in this? Well, then how do we do it? And we're missing some of those elements of that conversation, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence, right? So if we can clearly communicate, here's the problem we set out to solve, because we were curious up front and really got clear on what the problem was. If we can always tie it back to that, that really does create a lot of confidence internally of, well, we really can't question the need for why we need to do this. And then the research says, here's why, and here's how we can go about that. So it's really just making sure you have all those elements to have that healthy dialogue. And that can be with your peers, and that can also be with senior leadership. So those elements work at all levels of conversation.
That is, I think, such a brilliant insight. I mean, the whole concept of, start with why, start small, make sure you fully understand before you dive in, I think is so appropriate. But, I know
we to push back, sometimes, those spirit tickets aren't as clear, and that might just be because there isn't clarity internally. And that in and of itself can create a good conversation of, well, that's a really good question. I wonder why we decided that was a priority, and it may not be anymore. In some cases, it does fall to the wayside because, that's actually not an issue. But yeah, so get curious up front, ask a lot of why. It can only benefit the team in the long run.
I think, through this entire conversation, what I've learned and heard is it's so important to say yes first, figure out where the next yes goes, but ask why at the same time.
Be curious.
Be curious. Stay open to opportunities, but it also kind of sounds like make friends, right? Like make friends internally,
absolutely.
so you can have these open conversations, have these dialogues, have like an honest space to be able to share, but also not just what you're doing for customers, building this trust and confidence in the digital process, but internally trust and confidence in what the research team can come out with, create output for, and actually impact where the business is going.
Absolutely. Never underestimate the power of cultivating relationships outside of your organization. And again, that's one thing that those all hands projects has really opened us up to. Some of the researchers on my team have developed their own relationships with folks outside just by nature of their position in that particular project and making connections. So yes, super valuable.
Amazing. Shannon, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you so
I really
much.
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for being on the show. How does somebody touch base with you, learn more about you, purchase your book, or just kind of keep up to date with the amazing work that you're doing at Signet?
Well, thank you, Cornelia. This has been a fantastic conversation. It's been a fun perk to my day. It breaks up the monotony of my day. So thank you again for having me. And thank you for helping me promote my book. You can find me on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, Shannon Graf with one F. The book is called It's Nothing But Pavement. So you can find that, like I said, on Amazon. Digital copies, you can order a hard copy there, or on barnesandnoble.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Shannon Graf Creative. Yeah, and then I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Shannon Graf.
Amazing. Thank you so much again, Shannon. This was so fun.
Thank you. Appreciate it.